Hello. You are waiting for Messiah. But do you know who are you waiting for? Do you expect someone to come down from the sky? Is it going to be a man or a woman? Is the Messiah going to be a human? What do you think that he will do? What will happen? What will change? Will you see God? What will happen to you? You don't really know, do you? Well, do you want to know the truth? The truth is that you have never seen God. You don't even know anybody who has seen him. You read the Bible, but the problem is that you can't understand many things in it, and you listen to what the religious leaders tell you. The religious leaders haven't seen God either. Are they telling the truth? Do they really know anything about God and what the Bible is teaching you? Now let's talk about the Bible itself. Maybe you think that the Bible tells you about God. But in reality, the Bible does not give you any explanatory information about God. From the other hand, the Bible describes how the universe was created. It also tells you the stories of the different people who lived in the different times and different situations. The Bible tells you the stories about the people, not the story about God. The truth is that the Bible is teaching you about God's creations, not about God. What are the God's creations? It's you and the world around you. The Bible also gives you the special rules, telling you how you must perform certain rituals and what kind of the diet you should observe during the special holidays. How can this be connected with God? Why would God care about your rituals and your diet? What is the true meaning of these rules? Besides, the stories described in the Bible have happened hundreds of years earlier than the Bible was written. You can't say that the writing didn't exist when these stories happened, because we have the other written texts of that period. The another mystery in the Bible is the lifespan of the people. Why the authors tell you that the people lived up to 1,000 years? In fact, the human body is not designed to live that long. Why the authors didn't give you the correct lifespan of the people? The other interesting fact is the names of the spiritual characters. In Hebrew language, the names have meanings. The names of the characters strictly correspond to their ways of life. The name to the person is given at birth. So how the parents could have known what their baby will do when he grows up and what kind of life he will live? Also, in the Bible there are two types of characters. One type is the spiritual characters, like the prophets and saints. And the second type is the historical characters, like the kings, emperors, and pharaohs. We don't have any archaeological or historical evidence proving that the spiritual characters in the Bible really existed. And from the other hand, we have lots of evidence proving that the historical characters in the Bible really existed. Does it mean that the spiritual characters in the Bible are not the real people and they are just the invented characters like the personages in the movies? The characters in the movie are created in order to tell you some story. So if the spiritual characters in the Bible are invented, then what story the authors of the Bible wanted to tell you? Of course, the Bible is not the collection of the stories designed to pass time. It is the book of knowledge. The book that teaches you something. But what does it teach you? Maybe the authors want to tell you about the relationship between humans and God. Then what did these people know about God that you don't know? Considering the fact that they lived in the times when the people didn't even know that the earth is round and it revolves around the sun. So they knew about God more than you do. It is a little confusing. Either the authors really knew something you don't know, or they just told you their assumptions. So which one is it? Did they really know something you don't know? The truth is that they really knew something. But how? those days people didn't even have the basic knowledge of the science. So how could they know anything about God? What is the science and how does it develop? The science studies the humans and the environment. The psychology and psychiatry study the human behavior. The anatomy studies the human body. Physics and chemistry study the environment around us and the universe and so on. In order to know something, you have to study it. Did the authors of the Bible study God? How do you study something that you can't see or feel? You can study it by studying its actions. For example, in order to identify the disease, the doctors study its symptoms. So in order to study God, you must study His creations. The most sophisticated creation of God is the human being. The most sophisticated part in the human is the ability to sense being alive and the ability to think. So the authors of the Bible studied the humans. In particular, the human mind and consciousness. Have you noticed that the Bible tells you about how the humans behave in the different situations? It tells you about the human psychology or the human mind and consciousness. The interesting part in the Bible is the communication between the humans and God. This communication always happens in a strange manner. This means that the authors of the Bible also studied the ways of communication with God. Okay then. How did they study it? In those days, the sciences like the psychology and psychiatry were not developed yet. Where these people got the knowledge necessary to explain the human behavior? There is a very important clue in the Bible. It tells you to know yourself. This means that the authors of the Bible just studied themselves. They studied their own mind and consciousness, how they work and how they communicate with God. Now, if the Bible teaches about the human mind and consciousness and the ways of the communication with God, why isn't it written as a textbook, like the scientific literature? There are two reasons for it. The first reason is the lack of the scientific terminology and the general education of the people. In those days, practically nobody would understand the text written as the scientific literature. The second reason is the fact that the authors wanted their book to be attractive to the general public. It was not written only for a small group of the people. The human mind is more lenient to the interesting story than to the dry information. You always prefer to watch the good movie instead of learning how the atoms perform in the nuclear reactor. So the authors chose to write the Bible as the stories of the people. It is easier for the human mind to associate itself with the human beings than with the abstract things. So they used the symbolism. In order to be able to read the Bible, you must understand what symbolizes what. In order to be able to read the encrypted text, you must have the instructions of the encryption. Did the authors of the Bible leave the instructions how to read the Bible texts? Of course they did. But they didn't make these instructions available for the general public. Only the selected groups of the people had these instructions. Who are these groups and why you haven't heard of them? If you really look for them, you will find them. These instructions can be found in Jewish mysticism. The Freemasons also have these instructions. I don't know how they got it, but there is nothing strange about it. The Freemasons are surrounded with the secrecy. In 21st century, with the easy access to any information, it is very difficult to keep the serious secrets hidden. So the major part of these instructions became available for the general public. If you really want to, you can find them. You must collect it like the pieces of the puzzle. It is not an easy task, but it is possible. Now let's figure out why you believe in God. Since you have never seen God, why do you believe that God exists? The reason for it is the faith. Faith is the ability to believe without having the proof. Usually the best proof for you is to see something. You heard the phrase, seeing is believing. But the reality is that your mind learned to accept the fact that some things you can't see do exist. For example, when you look in the mirror you can't see your mind or consciousness, but you know that they exist. So your mind accepts the fact that some items can exist even if you can't see them. The second reason for faith is that the society is not structured in a fair way. You always feel that you deserve better life. You deserve more than what you get. So you want to believe that there is some divine power that is capable of changing it. Especially when you feel helpless. You want to have someone who can help you. So you want this someone to exist. You want God to exist. Okay. You want God to exist. But does he really exist? To answer this question you must know who or what is God. The spiritual leaders tell you that God is some kind of divine power that you can't understand. According to the knowledge that the Jewish mysticism and the Freemasons have, God is the common consciousness. What is the common consciousness? The common consciousness is the consciousness that is connected to all the other consciousnesses. It means that it communicates with the others and it feels what all the others feel. Let's figure out what is the consciousness to begin with. The consciousness is what makes you feel that you exist. How does it do it? You are feeling the surrounding world and also feel the emotions. The emotions create some kind of the internal world in you. The consciousness creates the sensation of the existence by separating the external world from the internal world. This feeling of being separated from the outside world creates the sensation of the existence. The consciousness is using the feelings and the emotions as the source of the information. It doesn't think. It only feels. The thinking part is done by your mind. Now let's figure out if your consciousness can connect with the another consciousness and communicate with it. If you ask a pregnant woman, she will tell you that she feels her baby's feelings. She feels when her baby is happy and when the baby is sad. Even though the mother and the child are physically connected with each other, their brains are not connected by the nerve system. They are two separate entities. This means that the two consciousnesses communicate directly, without the brains being connected. The woman can be pregnant with twins or the triplets. This shows that more than two consciousnesses can be connected and communicate. This shows that the common consciousness can exist. The human body is made of the physical particles. Depending on how these particles are aligned, they create DNA. Different cells in your body and finally the whole body. How these particles align is determined by the nature, not by you or somebody else. If the nature does align the particles in your body in the way that your body can have the consciousness, why would not the nature align the particles in whole vast universe the way that the universe could have its own consciousness? I will tell you more. During the quantum physics experiments, the scientists discovered a very strange fact. Two entangled particles of any physical material communicate with each other. They send and receive the information to and from each other. Even the light communicates with the other light. Probably you know that the light is the wave of the photons. It turns out that two entangled photons communicate with each other. This is a strange phenomenon, but it happens. Albert Einstein called it the spooky action at the distance. The quantum computer is based on this phenomenon. Accordingly, the universe must have its own consciousness. Same as the pregnant woman's body is physically connected to her baby's body. Your body is physically connected to the universe. If the consciousness of the pregnant woman can communicate with the consciousness of her baby, the consciousness of the universe can also communicate with your consciousness. This proves that the common consciousness must exist. God must exist. Now, what do we know about the Messiah? We know that God will send him. But will he have the physical form? God doesn't have the physical form. So why should the Messiah have it? You might say that Jesus Christ had a human form and he was the Messiah. So when he returns, he will be a human again. The truth is that Jesus had two reasons to come in a human form. First reason was to show to the humans that the Messiah really exists. The best way for you to believe it is to see it. The second reason is that he had to be crucified. For this reason he had to have the human form. But why the Messiah had to be crucified? Could not God save you without his crucifixion? Of course he could, but he wanted to show you something. It was the demonstration of how you must save yourself. I know that you don't really understand what I am talking about, so let me explain. When it's difficult to explain something to someone, you just show it. So God just showed you what he couldn't explain with the words. I have already told you that the Bible is using the symbolism. Jesus Christ himself symbolizes your consciousness. He is the Son of God. So he is the Son of common consciousness. When he tells you that you are also the children of God, he is talking about your consciousness. The cross symbolizes your guilt. Jesus tells you to carry his cross. This means that he wants you to feel your guilt in all your deeds. The fact of the crucifixion symbolizes the process when your consciousness is nailed to your guilt and is feeling the pain for all your wrongdoings. The fact is that your consciousness didn't do anything wrong. It's your mind that is responsible for your sins. Jesus was crucified for the sins of humanity. The humans in the Bible symbolize your mind. The different human characters symbolize your mind in the different situations. Accordingly, your consciousness through your guilt must feel the pain caused by the sins of your mind. Here the story becomes more interesting. Not many of you pay the necessary attention to the biblical character named Barabbas. It's not strange since he is mentioned in the Bible only once. The only information we have about him is that he was a robber and a sinner. In Hebrew language, Barabbas means the son of the Father or the Son of God. This means that he also symbolizes your consciousness. Most likely you remember that Pilates offered to free one fugitive, and instead of Jesus the people choose to free Barabbas. This symbolizes the fact that your mind prefers to have the consciousness that doesn't feel the pain caused by the wrongdoings of your mind. All this tells you one very important thing. In order to be saved, you must choose to have the consciousness that will feel the pain of your guilt each time when your mind is planning to do or is already doing something wrong. You should not choose to have the consciousness that will accept the sins of your mind. Considering all the above mentioned, you should realize that the real Messiah is your consciousness that is already in you. Don't wait for some divine being to come down from the sky. Just feel your guilt each time when you do something and have the consciousness that doesn't accept the sins of your mind. You probably heard about the lost Gospel of Thomas. It is not in the Bible. Maybe because it was lost. It was found with the Dead Sea Scrolls in 1940s. It was written between 50 and 150 AD. It tells us about what Jesus said, not what he did. There is one very interesting verse. His disciples said to him, "When will the dead have rest? And when will the new world come?" He said to them, "What you're looking for has already come, but you don't know it." I hope I could help to understand the truth about Messiah a little better. If you want to know more about God, devil, heaven and hell, Bible and etc., sign up to my YouTube channel and watch my videos.